Thank you very much, Mr. Farage. And I would now like some very good contributions from the audience on the issue of should Britain leave the EU. This will hopefully last for a good hour, and I may remind the audience to make the points very clear, concise, and to give fair time allotments for individuals who speak. I shall point to members of the audience, so raise your hand, and I will try to get through as many of you as possible within the allotted time we have. Thank you.
Mr. Farage, you've repeatedly stated on behalf of your party, you even included it in your 2010 election manifesto, that Britain should, and I quote, withdraw from the EU superstate. Thank you.
That is your view, and whilst I may not agree with it, it is one which under normal circumstances would be entitled to respect. But whilst you openly suggest removing Britain from the EU, you and your UKIP colleagues appear to dismiss your Euroscepticism when it comes to lining your pockets with the £86,000 a year you earn from your roles as MEPs. I wonder if the thought of Britain leaving the EU would look quite so rosy once you're out of a job. In 2010, you attacked the newly elected President of the EU, Herman Van Rompuy, claiming he looked like a low-grade bank clerk with the charisma of a damp rat.
Well, that certainly sounds like that, yeah.
At the time, many people began to see you as the farcical character that you are, but due to the fact that you, a smug, arrogant hypocrite, made these comments, means that they are incredibly rich. Finally, Mr. Farage, I ask you, as the self-proclaimed voice of the British people and the king of Euroscepticism, should the government accept your advice and leave the EU, how would you recommend that they replace the 600,000 jobs which the EU has created for Brits since 1992? How would you recommend they raise...
Is this the Labour Party handbook you're reading out?
No, it's the EU's handbook.
Oh, there we are.
How would you recommend they raise the additional prosperity they have provided every British home with £4,000 since 1992?
Oh, you're having a laugh, aren't you?
And how would you recommend they replace the £7 billion which the EU has provided to improve the private areas of Britain? And most importantly, how would you intend on earning a living?
Right, well look, there's an awful lot there. Let's deal with the last section the most quickly. I tell you what, give me 20 quid, I'll give you £10 back, and you then tell the rest of this room how rich you are. The idea that we benefited financially from being in this union is laughable, and the British public know it. It's costing us an absolute fortune in contributions, in unnecessary regulations, in the loss of our fish stocks and everything else. We are a massive financial loser being in this union. As incidentally, sir, am I. A massive financial loser by giving up a successful company in the city and becoming an MEP and earning a salary which is about 2/3 of what the local GP down the road here earns. Now, please do not think that 80,000 a year is a massive salary for anybody with real talent in modern Britain. There are nearly 50,000 GPs earning more than that. I won't embarrass the Vice-Chancellor by asking you how much he... But you know, I mean, come on, be realistic. The headmaster of the local school down the road probably gets 112,000 a year, 115,000 a year. Oh, and if you get a job running Quango, or being Chief Executive of Suffolk County Council, you get £250,000 a year. Do not tell me that I have financially benefited being a member of the European Parliament. It has cost me an absolute small fortune to do it, but I don't regret it because I've pursued a passion. And give me the opportunity to vote in the European Parliament, to sack all the MEPs, and I promise you, I'll be the turkey that votes for Christmas.
Hello. As a fan of democracy and admitting that all our politicians want to remain in the European Union, how do you imagine that Britain will leave the European Union? Do you support campaigns like the People's Pledge?
The one way that we leave the European Union is that our professional career political classes come to their senses. I don't share a great deal of optimism about that happening. Another way we leave the European Union is they expel us. You know, I perhaps offend somebody and they say, that's it, you're out. But somehow I think they want the 50 million quid a day. And I think Mercedes want to go on selling their cars in Britain trouble-free. The other way is that UKIP forms a government. Well, smashing. We did come second in the Euro elections a few years ago, but we haven't got time for UKIP to become big enough to form a government for the reasons I gave at the end of my talk. This is serious. So, the way that we get it is through a free and fair referendum. And if my friend, the first questioner, if the majority of people in a free and fair, has to be free and fair, if the majority of people in a free and fair referendum vote for us to become province number 17 of this new state, that's fine. I won't like it, but I'll stop being a bloody nuisance, I'll pack up and go and do something else. But I'm actually convinced that they wouldn't do that. So the question really is, how do we get the referendum? Now, I think that the People's Pledge, I think that Open Europe, I think that all these think tanks and pressure groups help. But actually, realistically, there's only one way we're going to get a referendum, and that is if UKIP in 2012 and 13 and 14 grows in the same way that it grew during 2011, if we get to the point where parties fear they haven't got a chance of forming a government because of the size of the UKIP vote, they will give in and they will give us a referendum. Now, traditionally, of course, it was the Labour Party that was the Eurosceptic, patriotic party in British politics. They completely gave that up with, you know, Kinnock becoming a commissioner, Mandelson, Blair, and all the rest of it. The Tory party is led by people who totally believe in EU membership. Cameron's very clear on this. 4 times now Cameron has said, despite the fact of giving us a cast iron guarantee, if you remember, that we'd have a referendum, but 4 times now Cameron has said, no, there must not be a referendum on our membership because I want us to stay in. So he's saying, sort of, damn you, I know how you're going to vote and I'm not going to let you. But within the grassroots of the Conservative Party, certainly in this part of the country, you know, I get invited to a variety of Conservative dinners and business clubs, and they always threaten the local chairman with expulsion if this awful Farage bloke turns up, but I still go. I would honestly estimate 8 out of 10 Conservative supporters and voters in this country do not want us to be part of the EU, would like us to get a proper, sensible grip on immigration into Britain, would support the UKIP policy that grammar schools were the way to give children from poorer backgrounds the best opportunity to achieve social mobility, would agree with us that we shouldn't throw out of the window habeas corpus, our right to trial by jury, the presumption of innocence before guilt for a gang of unelected judges in Strasbourg. And I can go on through the UKIP manifesto. So 8 out of 10 of those Tories in southern England agree with us and not with their own leader. If they start coming to us in big numbers, if the Tory party realise they'll lose nearly every seat in Kent, for argument's sake, not Tunbridge Wells, I grant you, but they'll lose nearly every seat in Kent because of the strength of UKIP, there will be that referendum. And that's why I genuinely believe that UKIP has a big, historic role to play in British politics. We've got to be the catalyst for that change. Let's get the referendum. I'm not pretending, folks, that leaving the EU solves our problems. It doesn't solve any of them. But what it does is it gives us the ability to deal with our problems, which we currently don't have. Okay? Where are we going?
Gentleman in the centre.
Good evening, Nigel.
Good evening. It's a very civilised start. Well done. Really good.
My mother brought me up very well. 2-part question for you.
Yeah.
Firstly, is it true that the EU paid our government to close down a steel plant in the northeast somewhere? And secondly, which is more likely, Daniel Hannan joining UKIP or Daniel Hannan actually getting a Westminster seat and trying to wrest control of the Tory party?
Okay. Firstly, with steelworks. Right. It has been decided that CO2 emissions are leading to terrifying rates of global warming, and therefore what we have to do is to stop people producing CO2 and all will be well. I have absolutely no idea whether that theory is correct or not. No idea at all. And actually, if you speak to scientists, they're completely split on the issue too. But in a desperate bid to be popular, when green issues were very much in the ascendancy 10 or 15 years ago, the EU decided we'd have a whole series of targets to reduce CO2 and to increase the amount of renewables that contribute to our electricity supply. So two things have happened. Firstly, the wind farms, which I touched on, which I think are the greatest stupidity I've ever seen in my life. They don't work. Did you notice this morning how cold it was? How much wind was there? None. None. The Germans went down this road. They built 22,000 wind turbines, onshore predominantly. And last winter, when we had that big cold winter, a great big anticyclone sat over the North Sea for week after week after week with record low temperatures, record high demand for electricity and zero production from the wind farms. And the Germans this year have just built 6 new coal-fired power stations to back up the wind turbines in case we get a cold winter. Meaning that the net effect of all of this is actually increased CO2 emissions, not decreased CO2 emissions. And who makes money out of the wind farms? I'll tell you. People like Sir Reginald Sheffield, David Cameron's father-in-law, who gets 350 grand a year for having these monstrosities on his land in Lincolnshire. People like Nick Clegg's wife, who was a director of the biggest Spanish wind farm company. Who are the losers? The pensioners living in this street. Because of every electricity bill in this country, we put 15% on to subsidise the rich people who put this stuff on their land. It represents one of the greatest transfers of money from poor to rich people that we've simply ever seen. Another part of the equation was the whole business of carbon credits. Now, it is a complex thing that has become a financial instrument. But when Chorus closed, Chorus was a steel plant in Redcar. Chorus closed, in fact, the year before last, I think it was now, end of 10. Chorus closed down, making 1,500 people in Redcar unemployed, which is pretty serious in a relatively depressed northeast town. For closing down the plant, Chorus were given £300 million worth of carbon credits. Have you done well? You've reduced your CO2 emissions, here's 300 million quid. So they give them in the form of bonds, which they can then sell onto the market. The next week, Chorus announced that they were reopening that lost capacity in India. So the net effect on CO2 emissions is zero, and what we, the British taxpayer, have done to meet our European obligations is actually to pay to deindustrialise this country. It is completely mad. I am not against sensible environmental policies. Indeed, I voted Green back in 1989, and I'm a member of all sorts of sustainable farming trusts. I do care about the environment, but the obsession with CO2 has led to a mess. Now, your last question. Look, Dan Hannan, for those that don't know Dan is a Tory MEP for this part of the world. Very bright fella. Agrees politically with nearly all of the things that UKIP do. I said to Dan last week in the lift in Strasbourg, I said, Dan, either you're in the wrong party, or I'm in the wrong party, or we're both in the wrong party. I don't know. But at some point in time, I think these issues are so fundamental that we may well see a realignment of British politics. And I think, given the 3 tired old parties now virtually represent the same thing, if there was a fresh force in British politics motivated by patriotism but without any dislike of anybody else, motivated by the idea that government is too big and that our liberties have been taken away from us, I reckon it would do very well indeed. Okay?
Gentleman there.
round.
Thank you. As someone that comes from Plymouth, very near Cornwall,
Yep.
that sees how Cornwall could not sustain its future in overfishing in Cornwall. It sees there's simply only a limited amount of fish stock. That saw the European investment into things as big as the Eden project, that saw high streets flourish because of the investment of Europe, that yes, we may only get 50, whatever percentage of the money that we give to Europe back, but the add-on effects that come from what the money that Europe comes vastly overpays the amount that we give them. I see the benefit that the European Union does to this country, to the most deprived people in the most deprived areas, and gives us a sustainable future when we've got America and China and India, the BRIC countries growing. We need the EU to survive as a country. We do not need your lunacy policies.
Well, their propaganda has worked on you jolly well, hasn't it? Because what they do...
My eyes have worked.
Well, okay, let's talk about Cornwall, son, shall we? Let's talk about Cornwall. I had dinner last night with the owner of Trago Mills, who, as you know, are the biggest company based in Cornwall, with those huge out-of-town shopping stores in Liscar. Don't shake your head. In Liscar and Falmouth. So Bruce employs 1,000 people in Cornwall, which in Cornish terms is big stuff. Cornwall is, of course, as you know, an island, surrounded by the sea and with the Tamar, this huge division of the Tamar. What has happened to the Cornish fishing industry is nothing short of a total and absolute tragedy. And if the spin of these people who have put together one of the worst man-made ecological disasters in the world, if their spin has got through to you, I'm sad. What has happened is this. International waters, globally, as agreed in 1976, after the Icelandics beat us in a cod war, say that up to 200 miles from your shore, or the median line, i.e. the division between France and England, that the fish that swim in those waters are your resource and your asset. Okay? What we have done, as a member of the European Union, is we have given away over 4/5 of that asset to other countries. We as a country are allowed to catch 18% by value of the fish that swim in British territorial waters. We are also forced to use a regime called quotas, which means much of the year we throw back dead more than we're allowed to keep. And when you look at same countries like Norway, who are not governed by crooks in Brussels, but run their own country, discards in Norway are illegal. The fishing industry in Norway is flourishing. And I do recommend with those views you don't go down Newman and walk down the quayside and utter them, because they'll tip you in the drink. They'll tip you in the drink. These people, I've met them in the Fisherman's Mission in Newman. People whose families have fished out of there for 300 years, and they're gone. They're gone. Taken from us, given away by British politicians so desperate to get us into this wonderful European club. There is no example of more harm that has been done to this country than the common fisheries policy. And the sooner we're out of it, and the sooner we take back our territorial waters, and the sooner we put in place some proper conservation measures and get our fishing industry back, the better.
Hello Nigel. I wasn't expecting to agree with anything you said this evening, and I've been surprised actually. I do agree with you with fish discards. I completely disagree with you on wind turbines. Wind turbines are good. They're the business and will stop carbon emissions. I know, I work in that part of the industry. So I think you've got to be careful about talking about what you do know and talking about what you don't know. But I'm not talking about fish, I'm not talking about windmills. What I want to talk to you about is democracy. As a Marxist, we ain't got democracy in this country, we never have had. We haven't got democracy in Europe, we never have had. what makes you think it's any different if we come out of Europe? We still haven't got democracy. They still demonstrate on the streets of London against student tuition fees and still are completely ignored. It's no wonder that 60% of 18 to 30-year-olds don't vote. They're not going to vote if we come out of Europe. They're not going to vote if we stay in Europe.
Well, I think they will vote if it matters. They will. I mean, listen, I won't row about wind turbines with you. You have your view.
I know the stuff.
I've researched this for years. I think they're awful. We will. They're bloody ugly, though, aren't they? we will beg to differ on that. Democracy. Well, look. Yeah, you know, what is democracy and self-government? What we would certainly have back outside of the EU is self-government. All right, and you and I can agree on that.
Yeah.
I think where you're pushing towards is our system democratic? Is the electoral system we've got in this country democratic? I would agree with you. I think it's urgently in need of reform. Because even when you have a Tory government or a Labour government that's been in office for ages and is mega unpopular, still 2/3 of seats are safe seats. And that is a huge turn-off, isn't it? I mean, you as a Marxist, sir, if you were living in Esher, you know, and it was a rainy Thursday afternoon, what is the point?
It's bad up in Whitstable.
Yeah. But you know, what is the point if you go to vote? And the same would be if you were a high Tory living in Sheffield. There needs to be an incentive to get people to go down to the polling station. I agree with that. I have long felt that the German system was actually infinitely preferable to our system. Now, the Germans teaching us about democracy. But you know, they have 2 ballot papers, and one is under first past the post still, and it's for the man or woman to represent you in Bremerhaven South. And there are advantages to that. Because here in Canterbury, you know who your MP is. And that does give you a link, I think. And you feel, you know, there is your representative, and that's rather important. But you also have a second ballot paper in Germany, and the last 20% of the seats are made up with that second ballot paper, which is why the Greens and people like that get representation in the German Parliament. And I would like to see something along those lines. But look, we can argue about that once we've got our rights of self-government back. At the moment, we're being reduced to the position where general elections in this country are completely and utterly meaningless. 100% of employment legislation, 100% of health and safety legislation, 100% of environmental legislation, and now 100% of regulation of Britain's biggest industry, which is financial services. And I don't mean banking, I mean insurance, I mean investment, I mean pension funds and all the rest of it. So much of this has been handed over that increasingly voting doesn't matter. And I look forward to a self-governing Britain and you and I having a proper argument and presenting people with a proper choice. That would be a much healthier democracy than the one we're living in now. So there we are, we have points in common, which is good.
You agree or not?
You're on the Dimpleby's job, aren't you? You're trying to put one in. Listen, I did, when I mentioned Marx earlier, say that he was well-intentioned. Okay. Well-intentioned, certainly, no question about that. Yes.
Good evening, Mr. Farage. I'm from the Czech Republic, and in England I learned that many people don't like you for whatever reasons. But I want to say that in the eastern countries you are very popular, yes, because you represent the voice of us, and there are much more people than here who think that it is necessary what you say in the European Parliament. So I would like to thank you that you're one of the few who would say those unelected people like Rompuy and Barroso who would like to rule the Europe, that you say them what we think, the people. And my question is, if you and your party are willing to cooperate with our parties from the Eastern Europe, for example with European Conservative and Reformist Party, you know, and despite they aren't totally against the European Union, but still they share many of your values and thoughts. So because we aren't too strong and our voice is not very strong, as we can see, for example, French President Sarkozy, who's, yeah, you know what he says about us, he makes fun of us, so we're like nobody for them. So you're English, your voice is stronger. So if you are willing to cooperate with them and help move Europe from a strong federal state.
Thank you. It's a mystery to me how countries like yours that were imprisoned behind the Berlin Wall in the Iron Curtain, who went through those decades of failing economics and misery, or with almost no liberty, in a society where children reported on parents, horrible, horrible, horrible. And the Berlin Wall came down. And for 20 years, you've had independence, self-government, democracy, but you know, maybe between the two. And you've done wonderfully well, and you've re-established your parliaments, you've got a damn good constitution, a president, rather marvellous president actually in your case. You also, of course, split up Czechoslovakia, which again was an artificial creation. You did so, good example in fact, a question earlier, how do we leave the European Union? You know, the breakup of the Czech Republic and Slovakia shows you that you can break up currency unions, you can do it peaceably and be good neighbours and friends. And so it's a mystery to me. And do you know what I've seen with Eastern European politicians coming from countries where often the average salary is a mere fraction of what it is in Brussels? I've seen your politicians, your bureaucrats, many of whom prospered under communism, reinvent themselves and become pro-European and become multi-millionaires in the process and betray that hard-won freedom that you've enjoyed for such a short period of time. So I have enormous sympathy with what you're trying to do, and I'm going to Prague to speak at a big public rally on the second Monday of June. So yes, I will support parties like yours in the Czech Republic, absolutely. It is important people realise UKIP isn't just about this island, it's about the fact we want to live in a Europe of trade, democracy and freedom, and we'll all be happier when we do. Okay.
Should UK independence include Scottish independence?
Well, good question. I have to say, I used to take the old-fashioned view, the old-fashioned unionist view, that we must keep as much power in London as we possibly can, and we mustn't allow the Celtic Fringe to have any more autonomy over their own lives and over their own affairs. And I realised just how ridiculously wrong I was in thinking that. I've now come to the view that if we listened to old man Gladstone in 1886 and we'd given the Irish home rule, we wouldn't have had the IRA. We wouldn't have had thousands of deaths and all of that misery. You know, it works well in Catalonia, doesn't it? Catalonia has a huge degree of autonomy, but it's still part of the Spanish state. And I'm now all for devolution. I think the Scots should have as much self-government as they possibly want. I'd actually rather like to see Alex Salmond in charge of the Scottish budget, actually having to raise and spend his own money. I think the realities of the SNP would be rather different in those circumstances. So I believe that the English have been left out of all of this. The English deserve an identity and deserve a voice and deserve their own parliament. I want a new federal structure, the F word from me. I want a new federal structure for the United Kingdom that I think better reflects the mood of those nations. I don't want to see the United Kingdom break up, but I think if we try, and Miliband, Cameron and Clegg are trying, if we try to keep holding on to as much as we can, that may well force separation. I think accepting that people have, you know, their own identities within a bigger picture is the right way to go. And I think actually it's what's going to happen anyway. I think the genie's out of the bottle. I don't think Blair knew actually what he was doing. He thought that by giving a little bit of power he would kill the argument off, but no, they want more power, and you can't blame them really. So yeah, Alex Salmond in charge of raising and spending taxes in Scotland would be enormous fun, believe me. Okay.